Hello? I'm here alone. Hello?
You?
Shh. You expect to see somebody else?
You call him?
No.
Well, you got yourself a story, kid. Congratulations. Hope you're satisfied.
I don't want to see a guy go to jail for the rest of his life for something he didn't do.
Is that what passes for idealism these days?
Is Mimi gonna surrender?
No.
No. So where are you going?
Well, before she can not surrender, she has to first not get caught.
I don't understand. There was an easier way.
Usually is. You'll learn that lesson.
You know, I met your daughter. Your older daughter.
And you really do have yourself a story, don't you? I'm guessing you didn't just stumble into this information. By my count, there are exactly 4 people on the planet that knew about this. You get let in on something like this, Ben, you get answers, but not the ones you think. Secrets are a dangerous thing, Ben. We all think we want to know them, but if you've kept one to yourself, you come to understand that doing so means that you may learn something about somebody else, but you also discover something about yourself. I hope you're ready for that. At this point, I have no more secrets. You're a smart guy. Hold on, I'm not gonna hurt you. You know exactly what motivates me and has for the last 30 years. What you're gonna have to figure out is what motivates you. I hope you like the answer.
Hold on, Nick. Nick.
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.
How many people died in Iraq the first 2 times around? Can anybody explain to me what they died for? And you really want to go back? Look, I get it. It's a fraught subject for you. You saw a lot of friends die over there and you want to believe that their sacrifice was meaningful, but knowing what you know now, would you really send them all over again? What? You funny? Am I funny to you?
Why can't we ever just talk about music or something? I mean, do you ever just go to movies? Try turning this thing off, Joe. I feel bad for the hamster.
Man, I'm serious. It is not long before Sammy is old enough to go over there himself. Would you let him go?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, I would. She wouldn't allow it, but yeah. If it were up to me, absolutely.
Oh, how can you possibly say that?
All right, Joe.
Yeah.
Imagine that there is a man drowning in this river, all right? You don't know the guy, he's nobody to you. For all you know, he might beat his wife and his kids, and maybe the world's a better off place without him. But all you know is that there is a human being screaming over there, and you hear him. So what do? Do you just stand here and watch him die, or do you jump in and try to save his life?
All right, the current is too fast. So if I jumped in, there is a good chance that we would both drown. So I would find a long branch and use it to pull him out. What?
And there's the difference between you and me, Joe. Okay, so you find your branch, or maybe you don't. Maybe you pull him out. Maybe the branch snaps. Maybe he drowns before you can grab a hold of it. But whatever happens, you tell yourself that you did everything that you could. But that's a lie, because you didn't risk anything.
So you would just jump in?
Without a second thought.
It's reckless.
Life is not always safe.
You would probably die.
Maybe. You know what? If I lived, though, I wouldn't have any regrets. And you know, and that's what I want for my sons. That's what I want for my friends. You know what your problem is? You overthink everything. You don't commit. Well, indecision just leads to somebody else's decisions being made for you. Sometimes, you gotta fucking jump in the river.
Hey, buddy. How was school?
Fine.
Hi, sweetheart. Come on, help out. How's the day?
It was
what it was. I can't find it.
You can't find what?
My kitty cat bracelet.
Where was it?
In here. They couldn't have stolen that, would they?
I'm sure it'll turn up somewhere.
So soon?
Hey, Pop. There's this thing I gotta do.
Then you best go do it.
Agent Mansell, FBI. I'm looking
That's old.
What?
Your ID is a badge. Expired by about 20 years.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that ain't you in the photo. So, who are you? I'm just a man who's looking for someone. Yeah, well, you probably shouldn't flash cheese like that around here, bro. There are 3 types of people who, as you say, flash cheese. People who don't know any better, people who are seeking to intimidate, and people like me who wish with every fiber of their being that someone would try to take it from them.
Thank you for your service.
You too, old-timer. So any takers?
How can I help you?
Send me in the direction of this person.
Now, we talked about hive mentality, groupthink. Another term for it, coined by Charles T. Tart, the psychologist at the University of California, is consensus trance. And it can be briefly understood as, look, if it's not in the media, as far as we're concerned, it didn't happen. And if it did not happen, but it is in the media, it happened. A more common word for it is propaganda. And that's a systemic attempt by an interested individual or individuals to control the attitudes of groups, of individuals through the use of suggestion, and consequently to control their actions. And that word, actually, propaganda, is from the Latin propagare, which means the gardener's practice of pinning the fresh shoots of a plant into the earth in order to reproduce new plants, which will later take on a life of their own. Basically, the implication there is that it's introducing something foreign or pathogenic. So that's how the parasite works. Every mosquito, before it drains your blood, has to secrete some of its saliva into you first. So there's this injection first, spreading the disease. It's something which is foreign to your ordinary nature. Said in other works that I did on symbolism, that if man is not progressing spiritually, in all senses of that word, and he's striving hard. I mean, you know, people who are on the spiritual path will always tell you they've done everything they can, they're working very hard. Well then, don't you see that it implies that there's a weight holding you down? And that you're going to need that deconstructive mindset? Because you can keep pushing against the boulder, it's not going to do anything. This is a very yin thing. This is very Shivite. If a hot weather balloon isn't if a balloon isn't rising, maybe the weights are still tied to the ground. Let them go and the balloon flies without any effort. Doesn't require any effort, you see. And that's what I think is happening in terms of consciousness. One of the ways that they propagate this propaganda and consensus trance, and I've talked about a lot, is through the word, what I've referred to as talismanic words and terms. And these are well known to politicians and preachers and people who have understood, like Professor Tolkien's character Saruman, the power of the word, the power of speech to control the mind. It's a very esoteric concept that ties into the gods Mercury and Hermes and so on. We don't have time to explore. But my God, have we not had that in recent times, you see. Certain words that are thrown up there. And the study of these particular words, looking at their esoteric meaning, what they might imply connotatively or to the unconscious mind even, is very important. In an article by Paul Levy online called Breaking Bush's Spell, he says that George Bush is a master hypnotist who skillfully puts people under his spell. Bush mesmerizes people by using simple, repetitive phrases. To quote Nazi propaganda chief Goebbels, propaganda must therefore always be essentially simple and repetitious. Keep repeating them in this simplified form despite the objections of the intellectuals. Bush's talking points, his buzzwords, are his incantations. These magic words act as opiates to the fearful masses. To quote ex-Harvard University president James Bryant Conant, some of mankind's most terrible misdeeds have been committed under the spell of certain magic words or phrases. This is again the power of the word. And how do we make a word? We spell it. And to emphasize that point,
the world judged the Iraqi regime was a dangerous aggressor. In the interests of world peace and regional security, the community of nations required Iraq to surrender its offensive arsenal, its chemical and biological weapons, and abandon its nuclear weapons program. Iraq agreed to comply.
The world judged the Iraqi regime to be a dangerous aggressor. In the interests of world peace and regional security, the community of nations expelled Iraq from Kuwait required Iraq to surrender its offensive arsenal, its chemical biological weapons, and to abandon its nuclear weapons program. Iraq agreed to comply. Iraq's continued defiance of the community of nations presents a challenge which must be addressed.
Presents a challenge which must be addressed. It is inherently dangerous
to allow a country such as Iraq
to retain weapons of mass destruction, particularly in the light of its past aggressive behaviour.
That's right. If the world community fails to disarm Iraq, we fear that other world states will be encouraged to believe that they too can have these weapons, these most deadly of weapons, to systematically defy international resolutions, and that the world will do nothing to stop them.
That is the ultimate nightmare, Mr. Speaker, which the world must take decisive and effective steps to prevent. Possession of chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons by terrorists would constitute a direct, undeniable, and lethal threat including to Canada Australia and its people. The world has tried for years other means, but so far to no avail. We cannot walk away from the threat that Iraq's continued possession of weapons of mass destruction constitutes to its region and to the wider world. In the final analysis, Mr. Speaker, the absolute conviction of the government is that disarming Iraq is necessary for the long-term security of the world and is therefore manifestly in the national interest of Australia.
In the final analysis, disarming Iraq is necessary for the long-term security of the world, to the collective interests of our historic allies, and therefore manifestly, Mr. Speaker, it is in the national interest of this country.
And so on and so forth. President of Canada, President of Australia. No ostensible connections and exactly the same script, practically word for word. We have many other examples of this. No conspiracy. Nobody higher up. It's all coming from their minds and their brains. Remember John Dean's statement about how Bush's attitude in the White House when they're sitting there? Like he's just sitting there officiating over some sort of macabre play? How much do we know about these words? Do we know that government is actually from gubernare, and mente is mental, the governance of the mind? Do we know, for instance, that the word to entertain, what it really means? For instance, that in Norwegian, actually, it means to be held under, to hold, to be held down. Entertain in Norwegian means to be held under, just like to be amused or amazed means to be confused, to distract. Yep. We know that the religious world is full of this type of talismanic wordsmithery, you see. Take a word that's used so ubiquitously, like spirit. What does the word really mean? Little more, actually, than breath. That's what it really means. But look at the loadedness of that word. Look what it's come to mean in the mind of people. When we look at this word, for instance, enlightenment, I would say that almost 100% of the people here, or anyone watching this, has a very clear understanding in their mind of what this means. And they're envisioning light, like luminescence. But in fact, has anyone thought that it also could mean lightness, as in weight? Very few. And yet, perhaps if we think about the word enlightenment and think, does it really mean, is it really connected to light and luminescence? What is light? Can light not conceal as much as it reveals? And if you look at the first card of the tarot, the Fool, if you look at what the Taoists were saying, could it be that enlightenment is really a sense of lightness in a sense of weight? But the thing is, you see, that we're, by this abnegation, by this avoidance, like Patrick McGowan said, everybody votes for a dictator. Now, you might say, yes, but I don't vote for your dictator. I prefer this guy. You prefer that guy. But at the end of the day, does it really matter what the stereotype is? We come back to this idea that it's going to be a profoundly attitudinal sense of freedom that basically is the beginning of this differentiation, individuation, selfhood process. Which is why then you can understand why it's not going to happen for everybody. Because that's the criteria. You already have to have that that sense of attitudinal independence. And one might even argue that you either have it or you don't. Maybe it cannot be instilled in someone who doesn't already have it. What we do know is that it's being uninstilled. We know that it's being suppressed deeply. And the experts who know, who have the evidence, they know this, that this is happening every day, every day. And so when we get to grips with that dynamic, there's a deeper sense of responsibility involved, because might we not also be doing that to other people? William Blake said, the fist that crushes the tyrant's head becomes a tyrant in its stead. We might be pointing at that tyranny over the hill or in the other valley, but we must observe our own relationships in life, and even most importantly our relationship with our own selves. How do we relate to our own selves? I went into this in other talks about the self-sadism that's implicit in our attitudes about ourselves, tying back into what Heidegger and even Hegel are talking about, the social persona. If everything that we know about ourselves, everything, is based on the approval rating of other people, and also the fact that we don't get the approval we require, what a mess. And then if everyone's doing that likewise, what a mess. It's the collective mirror then that becomes the prime datum for us, not individuality at all. Except when it's the chic individuality that is presented, you know, the faux version, the bogus version, by the media apparatus that have to give you now the simulacra of it in order to keep you pacified. And we'll be looking at that later on.
Hey guys, welcome. Andre Hodge, Infinite Potential Healing, Servant of Truth with you once more. Thank you as always for allowing me to be a part of your journey. I hope everything on your end, despite how the world seems and the escalation of craziness and uncertainty and stuff, while that outside world is hugely destabilizing on some level, your core and your inner sort of attitude and resilience and strength, you're finding more empowerment on that level, and there's a mismatch. Like, what's going on out there is crazy, the future is uncertain, and it's very hard to plot a course, but also in parallel to that, you're feeling the best you've ever probably felt. And I can assure you on my end, I'm feeling the best I've really felt in a very long time, if not ever. And if that is your case, and you've been investing in my stuff over the years, particularly this last 12 months, 6 months, 3 months especially, and the recent ones I've done, if my content has been an ally for you to be above the uncertainty, like stable and feeling empowered and stuff, I really appreciate that. Doing this sort of thing and offering my stuff publicly and being accessible this way, it was never something I sort of planned for. I was extremely reluctant to do it, and I've always been a bit of a tortoise. Like, you might think I'm fast and stuff, but I'm very thorough and work very hard, and like a duck I paddle very hard behind the scenes, and very diligent and thorough and cross-reference and stuff. And like, for instance, I only set up a Facebook page mid-2018, and I probably missed a lot of connections and stuff over the years, and I got my YouTube channel going 2014 and stuff when I started doing my series way back then, and a lot of content back then, because I felt a lot of gaps, but I would provide a platform for other people and that, because I was always humble like the dust. I felt everyone else had more perception, more talents, more charisma, you know, if you're here, you've had probably a really tough life and shit hasn't added up and it's actually been quite horrible. And so yeah, you've probably been like that with me and not wanting to step up and stuff, because it's like you dip your toe in that leadership sort of thing and you get absolutely clobbered and stuff. So it's been a very long journey for me to get to this and offering a lot of content, and particularly in this recent era offering my own original content, because as I've offered and attempted to offer some context and reference points and stuff, the volume I've done over the years, it's pretty much unparalleled. Alright, there aren't that many people out there that have done that much and been so thorough and have the ability to sort of subconsciously remember it and appreciate the body and the mechanics and the nutrition to set your body up for that, and particularly what's gone on in the last 5 or 6 years on our human species on the Earth's surface and stuff. So yeah, to get to this point and feel really confident and comfortable in offering original content, I'm sort of letting go of everything out there because it hasn't been enough. I honor the teachers and the paths I've had and what I've attempted to do. I've always operated with very high level of integrity, and if anyone doubts that and has a different answer to that, then who have you been involved with? Alright, who's compromised you? Because I'm going to get to that in a part of this video. But yeah, it's fascinating because I would offer, alright, if I wasn't a truth threat or a original content creator that had validity, then none of the stuff that's gone on with me would ever happen. Particularly these last 6 years, like I said in the synchronicity video, of structures that were paralleled and going at me, and just the multi-level sort of things, and the recent sort of last 18 months or so, or 3 or 4 years, like the level being that have been seeking me out. And what I realized is they've been just basically trying to work out my own mechanics to sabotage me, take it for themselves. But also there's like a big adjustment bureau red flag coming up for all of them, and tracking back through time, it's probably me that's been the brat that's done it. And so let's just fulfill that big red dot time for them in their adjustment bureau fate plans, alright? Because I know, like, what I've offered recently, particularly like the contrarian view sort of attitude of the trend is sort of exhausted, and the trader in me is like, I'm sensing a shift sort of thing and stuff. And from my perspective, as I've always said, I've got this favorite quote by this guy Thomas Cooper, and it was, fraud and falsehood dread investigation, truth invites it. Like, truth and authenticity, being the IT guy, like, it's, you got to appreciate I've got that lazy IT geek sort of aspect of letting computers do the work sort of thing. So IT geeks are very efficient in the way they operate. So aligning with truth and authenticity is a very efficient, energetic life force path. And maintaining the falsehood, it's like, you imagine you're spinning plates and you've got to maintain the energy of that plate momentum. Like, truth and authenticity just serve themselves. So, but the key in that, the truth, what it is, you have to be prepared to let go all that you know, all that you've accepted, all that you've assumed, to actually appreciate what's gone on, what is actually going on. And that's where I've gone back in the past and listened to all these teachers and particular people that have the skills to see and stuff. And then the evolution has been, I've discovered and found some incredible beings that have talents that are far superior than anything out there. And one of my main keys, apart from being super annoying, I've got a few people that say, geez, you're freaking annoying, and it's funny, but honestly, like, my relentlessness is annoying, alright, with people, because I'm never off. Like, I'm full on all the time and remember everything, and people hate, like, liars hate freaking me because I remember their shit that they do and stuff. But one of the jokes is I'm super annoying, and so I'm really feeling the urge to turn on that annoying superpower onto these frackers right now, alright? And it's going to annoy the shit out of them what I'm going to do, alright? And offer here, I think, because I'm going to help a lot of you translate the complex, real high-level pattern recognition to see sort of the outside edges of what's going. And I think if I give this, like, I'm going to be very general. There's more specifics that what I can offer and dive into, but a lot of people just get the pattern, the puzzle, decode it, like they decrypt the complex multi-layered, multi-dimensional puzzle going on, which I've always tried to chip away at, but I think this is going to be a really big decrypting the political codex. So maybe that's a good name. I'm just on the fly here, but this is going to be Amplify the Echoes number 14, and I was intending to do the second one of the Ayani that I did many months ago, and I haven't dipped into this series because I've been doing so much and working out the sovereignty declaration and the pure source spiritual assembly for multiverse resolution, and incorporating the pure source and 22D sort of mechanics and outside edges of the reality and stuff. Working from the multi-D for it to percolate through to the 3D. Say the micro of doing a healing in a session, it takes a while for like a few days. Like it might clear, say, the energy hiding of people. It takes a few days for that to percolate through and reintegrate the new level of being clear and stuff after gaining a lot more life force back. Well, just think on the bigger scales, it just takes magnitudes of time relative to the scale involved and stuff. And so at the moment I'm putting myself out there by offering the variables that I've been involved in the trenches and stuff, but I'm just aiming to offer that as a reference point. And if you haven't realized, like, I keep doing things and discovering things, and I've offered that concept of the unknown, like the vastness of the unknown. We have to be humble to it and discovering more stuff, and that's a perpetual variable of the relentlessness of the need to discover the unknown of what is going on versus what we presently know. So yeah, this is going to be Amplify the Echoes part 14, and codex to decrypt the political sort of stuff. I'm not sure what I'm going to say the name is, but basically I'm going to offer how the political variable at play and what's going on with them, because I've got a couple of interesting variables. If you've watched the synchronicity video that I did a few weeks ago, I've had a direct involvement, which gives me a very big, interesting pattern variable. And then I've dealt with other people that have very high level, fascinating sort of entanglements that offer reference points for me to be able to gain the pattern recognition. And I had some really big aha moments with all this stuff to be able to translate how the reality works. And yeah, like, I'm not sure how much I'm going to share because there's private sort of thing, but I'll give you the variables and stuff, and a lot of the information that's given me data to process and calculate all of this stuff. And it's interesting. I'm not going to offer a positive thing just for the sake of hope, because I really feel there's a big hope milking potential going on, and it's all set up, because it feels a lot like 2007-8 when the Bush sort of Obama sort of transition, where it was the same sort of setup. And you just have to really own this variable with the politics sort of stuff. Like, when has politics ever been the answer? When is, like, thinking this new thing is going to be the solution sort of stuff? If you go back to my GSF 27, where it was big chess move time, I offered a clip from a lecture in there from this Swedish guy. I just name him the Swedish guy. I keep forgetting his name, and honestly I'd probably butcher his name trying to say it, but there's a link in that relative to that lecture, and it goes back to the micro of this era of 60 years of basically the population control and one world sort of stuff. And in my perspective, a lot in the community and a lot of the cliche sort of sayings in spirituality is very much aligned to that. You know, they don't even know that they're doing that, and a lot what's going on in the public at the moment is all order out of chaos, right? Like creating chaos and stuff. So that's where the brat comes in and just offers a true variable, and then us at 22D Like, to me, a good metaphor of the 22D and the dimensional levels is like, say we go for 3D. If you understand how earthquakes work, and this is we'll just use this as a metaphor, right? So if you really truly appreciate the mechanics of the measuring of earthquakes, say a magnitude 1 to magnitude 2, what they do, it's not just one variable, it's like 30 times. So it's like 1, then 30, and then it's like massive. So every magnitude up is a 30 factor of the previous level. So I would offer like the dimension levels that operating at, it's a similar thing. So you imagine like the difference between, say, 3D to 5D and 7D, then 11.5D and 12D, and then 15D and then 22D. So yeah, how many 22D people do you think it will really take to change things? And it's honestly, it's not many. Very, like the high level qualities of spirituality, you know, the people that I operate with that are that expression, right? And you have to have a lot of responsibility with high level dimensional talents, because you have negative thoughts and stuff, and that you manifest that. And from my perspective and my manifesting and appreciating all these things and observing humanity, we're masters of manifesting the negative. And you know, everything out there and stuff, it's not all the negative aspects to blame. In part, right, what's out there is a byproduct of our creation and stuff, from naivety and stuff, from all the wiping and that. But there's another variable that I really appreciated, and that's the conscious willful ignorance, right? You know, saying that there's influences out there and stuff, and energy hygiene and, you know, suppression, it gets tough in the multi-D and stuff, but you can't dismiss it now, right? It's the willful ignorance of people. Like, say, you know, like I've been around for a long time and a lot of people know me, but they consciously don't choose to be thorough in their investigation. Like I've always said, thoroughness is your greatest ally. You want to be expansive and collect all the data and all the points that are out there that you can get to find the best algorithm in this for you. And I know I'm a very, very rich source of that. You know, like I condense the very complex of thousands of hours into a couple hours video and stuff that ideally is a shortcut for humanity to get up to speed ASAP. And sure, these people have been around and stuff like that, and there's definitely a lot of influences going on in people, but there's a absolute willful ignorance in people, right? We have to give that more weight, because we're not kids, we're adults, we're epic souls, we're so vast on a multi-dimensional level. And so splicing up that willful ignorance from the influences and stuff and the control, from my perspective, this is how I see it. If we were inferior to all the shit out there, they would not have to do that, alright? So that, to me, flipping that is, we must be so vast by their effort to influence and control. They are terrified to us. A metaphor is like, another joking metaphor is, if you watch the movie Suicide Squad, where Harley Quinn is in the cage, like she's like, I'm bored, I want to play, and she's just beating up the guards and stuff. To me, it's like we're mega pure source Harley Quinn cats, and these rats are just terrified of us, and they got us in a cage and stuff, and like there's all alarms going off with our awareness kicking in and shit, and it's just unsustainable and stuff. So to me, it's like, why play weak? Why play small? You just have to accept this. And I just appreciate the complexity and the challenge of this reality. And it's brutal and it's horrible. And some of the people around me that have, you know, gone through horrible experiences recently, but I would offer as well, like this really cementing in the 22D, like the audit and the clearing and being a match to that. It's freaking brutal. Like, we've all gone through it. Maybe you've been going through it. Maybe a lot of people around you are going through it. They don't even know it. And maybe like this, I'm offering this willful ignorance. Like, watch out for it. It's going to freaking clobber you. Like, if you know this shit's out there and see what I do and stuff, and you think you're the exclusion to the rule of all this shit, and you're messing with people because you've entangled with people and you're willfully doing it, let alone beyond the ignorance. Like, just that's why I've really emphasized the spiritual selfishness at the moment. Like, let people go through their shit. Crisis is a horrible thing to go through or witness with people, but that smashing might be the breaking of the old paradigm in themselves, and they might be going through a cocoon butterfly metaphor with that. And so there's just a lot of complex variables which, unless you're really in the trenches and doing this sort of stuff and really dedicated, it's not going to be easy to translate, because we don't have all the information potentially. There's other variables going on, and honestly, these invaders and stuff are extremely resourceful. They're not dumb. They're not to be dismissed. It's not to be disrespected from their abilities to conjure up shit and think like diabolically to do negative shit. That's where I've in the past I've talked about the spiritual Ted Bundys. You know, like there's that Ted Bundy series on Netflix about documentary of his mechanics and how diabolical he was. Like, he would go into the police station and observe, you know, the police at how they would try and work out him as a killer and stuff, and just extremely predatory and self-serving and stuff. So the self-serving is going to be a variable here that's going to play into our favor, because it's going to be interesting, because and this is with me, like back in 2012, 2014 and stuff, I realized, without even having the Asher context, that, you know, negative beings that are governed by self-interest, when there's abundance of stuff, they gravitate to that source to gain, like, etch out their own nourishment, their own wealth, their own popularity and stuff. So there's a sort of gravitation, like attracts like sort of thing. But say when self-serving, greedy, sort of predatory, energy harvesting beings have an absence of the resources going around, then from my perspective, that self-service they will frack over their ally sort of thing for their own nourishment. And so in my perspective of what I appreciate with the variables going on at this time, knowing that, say, back in GSF 31, which I offered, this is going back in April, we worked out, for instance, the Sphinx was being used as an off-world transfer hub or relay station for the life force energy. 60-70% of human life force were being transferred off-world from that, and we shut that down. And those Weezedak negative universes, Nibiru and stuff, we audited Nibiru again recently. Just, we know they love the pure source audit love from their violation going on and stuff, but all these external sources they are reliant on external nourishment. They're vampiric in their nature and stuff, and so that's a metaphor of these structures on the planet. They are here because we're a huge nourishment source from them. And yeah, like, we've just been removing one by one, string by string, healing by healing, and injustice anywhere, injustice everywhere, like tip of an iceberg of all the violations anywhere and stuff, and removing each string, each aspect one at a time to reduce the overall nourishment source. And in my perspective, it's starting to pay off, and the fracturing and stuff going on in political realms, I'm going to offer a bit of a translation of that. Right? So one of the things on the dimensional level sort of stuff, and this I offered like the 30 factor sort of 30 times 30 times 30 sort of thing, so you can work out the numbers relative to that and the dimensions if you want, because I think that's a bit of a metaphor of the strength of, say, 22D over 15 or 12 or whatever. Like, that's our superiority. So that's why the aspect of the spiritual community has, say, gone after me and many people to harvest their codes and life force and kundalini and put in fake oversouls and stuff like that. Like this time last year, bit before I've worked out, but holy shit, like, these fuckers are stealing our codes, and they've been doing it. It's been like the wild, or it's been like Westworld, right? If you've seen that series, like the humans go there, the diabolical humans, to be their psychopathic selves and treat the robots really horribly, and the robots like rebel sort of thing. And season 3 and 4 of that are pretty prophetic. It's fascinating that they never renewed it for season 5. I wonder what they were going to say in that, right? But yeah, like that's one of the really grateful things from the Asher perspective. There was only really one being that I know that I was talking about code stealing and stuff before I put it all together of all the violations going on with me, when my Galactic Special Forces series or marketing concept was hijacked by very diabolical people last year to lure in kids, fuck's sake, right? And yeah, I realized it's not just gone on in the past, like the pillaging to create the Leviathan skin suit. So context for this particular release is all the other releases in this series, and particularly like the Asher content that I've got for download. That's good referential concept sort of stuff. If you haven't done your homework, it's going to be time to hit the books, you know. The data is all there, you know, integrate it, and like awareness is going to be your ally to navigate of the craziness going on. Because like my first series I offered was multi-dimensional method to 3D madness. If you're coming from the 3D up, particularly with my stuff, if you think defending on the multi-D is relevant to what goes on in the 3D, it's opposite. It's like literally like Salvador Dali paintings, the abstract nature of our reality. If you're trying to defend on that level, thinking that you purely can do it on the 3D mechanics, I come from experience of freaking working in the trenches at a high level for 10 years, like doing missions, let alone all the other times. So maybe I know what I'm doing, right? Maybe you should be asking the questions of why I do that, not why it doesn't match up to what you think, right? So yeah, getting back to the dimensional thing that I'm saying, this is going back 10 years, like 2014, 2015 and stuff. I was working with Nikki Fetzi quite a bit. She birthed the 5D Earth, alright? And I was defending her, alright, for many years. I put her back together so many times over just those couple years. And when she was off traveling around the world, I would defend her, clear her, and just by my nature, I was an epic healer back then. And I never, you know, saw anything from it, but I never got validation from them a lot either. And that's where I had to go through this hard journey, because I was working with these people that were benefiting a lot from me. But so the 5D Earth she birthed, and all that she would need to do to defend that was put 7D defense on it, right? The reason why I'm bringing that up is, you know, a lot of people feel that they're inferior to a lot in the community and stuff, but I would offer that a lot of these people in the community, they're not that high, right? They're not as dimensionally advanced as what you think, but if you've ever watched Babylon 5, like the shadow beings, they had Ambassador, this slimy this slimy dude that would work with them, right? And they would come through him at a different dimensional level, and then they'd pop in the 3D reality now and again.
Ah, Mr. Molden. I see they found you. Good, good. You're looking well. All healed now, I take it?
I'm fine. What the hell is going on, Mallory?
A number of Vorlon ships are on their way here, accompanied by one of their planet killers. They will arrive in a matter of hours. They have been wiping out any colony, world, or outpost where your associates have influence. Kataja gave your associates the island of Salini as a base for their ships. Now that Kataja's dead, I am ordering you to remove those ships at once.
There are 3 billion people here. The Vorlons would never attack a civilian population that big. The ships stay.
afraid, aren't you? They're afraid. And speaking of your associates, we must make sure that we can talk privately. Do not move. I will have to have that painted over, I suppose.
You're insane.
On any other day, Mr. Morden, you would be wrong. Today is a very different day. One last time, remove your ships.
No. You don't frighten me, Malari. If you try to attack our forces, you'll lose.
Yes, your ships are very impressive in the air or in space. But at this moment, they are on the ground.
Right. They're on the ground. But they can sense an approaching ship miles away. So what are you gonna do, Malari, huh? Blow up the island?
Actually, now that you mention it.
No!
I had most of our people evacuated from Salini during the night. A few stayed to maintain the illusion of our presence. They knew it was being asked of them. I would have preferred another way. Hoped that you would be reasonable. But take him to a cell. Keep him there.
You just made a mistake, Londo. Even if my associates lose this war, they have allies. They'll make sure Centauri Prime pays the price for what you've done here today.
If you've ever watched Babylon 5, like the shadow beings, they had Ambassador, this slimy fucking this slimy dude that would work with them, right? And they would come through him at a different dimensional level, and then they'd pop in the 3D reality now and again. But so, from my perspective and revisiting the variables that have gone on in the past with interactions and stuff, I realise a lot of the people are Trojan horses. That's why I've offered that Trojan horse clip. But they're also working in partnership and getting the benefits from these high-level species in the unseen. Like this particular release is going to probably focus a lot on the reptilians and the draconians and the Anunnaki and the mantis. They love a lot of attention, but maybe those 3 or 4 species, but there's a lot more. Like in my sovereignty declaration, we worked out there's 125, and there's probably more. We even worked out in the last few weeks there's a mantis, reptilian, freaking Anunnaki combined species that was attacking sort of us, and that. So yeah, like thanks, like mixing those freaking 3 variables together, like genius. Like thanks for that. But the reason why I do the main species is it goes back to the origin sort of time of, you know, they go back half a trillion years sort of thing of the origin of those particular species. So I just focus on the bigger chess pieces, and with Asha's stuff within the field, it's like I appreciate her and I really love, like she's got so many characteristics that amazing reference points, like her endurance and her consistency and her just very generous in her neutrality, right? But I also feel like it's a big setup for failure. Like working at 12D was an absolute, we got annihilated working at 12D. It hasn't been enough, and it's been counteracted, but I also feel like her stuff was set up for failure, right? And it hasn't been enough. there's components in it that I really appreciate. Like, she was like, her beloveds told her to stay with the husband sort of thing, and she was in like a prisoner scenario, alright? Abusive, controlling the money and all that sort of stuff, and it took her a long time to get free of that. And she was going by their guidance of her beloved sort of thing to stay in it, right? And justification for it. So it's like, the beloveds are on a target for doing an audit, alright? With my GSF allies, right? So if they were truly there, then they would tell the world that Metatron got healed last year when we did it, because he's out there. But it's got to percolate through to the Saturn sort of lore and stuff, which, again, it is like rings, Lord of the Rings, and the box sort of stuff, and the Flower of Life, and all that crap, right? Feeding off to Weezadak and all that, you know. If there was a unity in the truth, then, you know, that would be imparted, but you have to ask the question, why isn't it, right? So, yeah, like, I do really love her as many variables, but I have a massive discernment bar, and even like one of the Amplify the Echoes series I offered a bit earlier, I was talking about the 12th Stargate potentially in the wrong place. Well, perhaps, and this is one variable I'm playing with, is like perhaps there's 13, alright? And there's a 13 CDD tablet and stuff like that, and so the 12th might be correct from her perspective, but the 13 might have been the 12th what I picked up, right? But again, it's like the subtleties of, like I said, the assumption that the tablets could not be corrupted, well, that leaves you vulnerable. It's like, if you assume that they're not, then you don't have a discernment variable with them, and that's where I just how they return sort of thing, timing and that, because this parallel of what's going on with what I said about the Swedish guy, it's just like, it's been so masterful, the rollout, right? And it's not stopping, and it's relentless and stuff. And so getting back to me and the original content sort of stuff, everything in the past, it hasn't been enough. Our situation is worse. It hasn't improved. The community is just the absolute jungle, and there's predators and stuff. And this video, what I'm eventually going to get to is, from my perspective, because we busted it, and how the sort of the government sort of control aspects are influencing the spiritual community and stuff. And then you think about the technology and all that sort of stuff that influences algorithms and all that sort of stuff. There's so many variables that are not on our side. But that, to me, again, is the level of fear of our superiority. Does that make sense? So the key is, like, if we are, then embody it. If we are superior, and it's time to get out of the fear of the uncertainty and just embody our superiority. And how do we do that? And so what I've offered in my sovereignty declaration, my healing, energy hygiene, be the focus, spiritual selfishness, but be relentless in acquiring data and challenging everything and drawing lines in the sand of how it's been, of particularly we've got to create something new, not repeat the same old. Like, to me, that's where I offered the first the very first Amplify the Echoes, and I realized, like, twin souls and stuff, how that was said to be a negative concept in the spiritual community. But then I worked out the Ayani massacre sort of stuff and appreciated that, and that just triggered so much bullshit. Like, then I had certain people come into my life and claiming that I was their Ayani partner and bullshit like that. And to me, it's like doing the same thing, expecting a different outcome, is the definition of insanity. So someone that freaking seeded the Ayani concept of, yeah, let's put souls in separate bodies as partners and shit like that. It triggered all the freaking relationship stuff of people wanting that shit. And so a lot of people are looking for the Ayani aspect now, thinking that that's the solution. But to me, you got to look at everything in the past as being an absolute freaking failure, alright? it didn't work. So we've got to create something organically new out of the wisdom of all the things in the past that have failed, right? And appreciate all the levels of influence and stuff, and all of this stuff is what I've endeavored to do and impart, because I've been doing these missions for a long time and it's been pretty peerless, right? And a lot of the people in the community I've dealt with, they should have, if they were organic and aligned to the outcome, you need to see that I am not known, and I don't, it's not about me being famous or anything, but there's been no, like, the crickets are loud sort of thing. And you need to ask, why don't you know all that stuff, and things like that. And so to me, all those variables are confirmation of not only the people in the community, but it's the right path. And if it is the right path, then you're not going to know about it, right? So that's a bit of an intro. It's good to catch up. It's good to be here. I'm feeling really like the best I've ever felt. And so what I'm going to do is break down a few components. One, the political, one, the spiritual, and one, the earth and land and stuff, because I'm seeing a relationship of how the political work with some aspects of the spiritual community, particularly like the grid workers and stuff. And to me, like, I did a really big earth pranic healing this week. It was very, very needed, because I've had a lot of sessions and a lot of high-level sessions, a lot of very messed up targeting and shit like that. And because of all those layers and dimensional levels and variables coming, it's very hard to splice everything up, but was able to be really thorough. And then the byproduct of that is there's still some angles coming in. And what I realized, it was earth that was, again, messed with. So I did a really big earth pranic healing this week that really cleared up a lot. So I'm going to have to be a bit more vigilant on that. But what I'm suggesting you guys, that probably across a lot of people, you really pay attention to who's doing grid work and shit. Because my whole thing is, like with earth pranic and earth energy hygiene, is remove everything to be naked. Like, we don't need anything. Pure earth is all we need, and her to be left alone. And people doing stuff to her, to me, it's like, it's trying to maintain aspects of the control. It's nothing to do with our freedom, and they're hijacking people to use them as minions and not give a shit, and violating free will and stuff. But there is no free will. You have to realize that. You have to claim it, alright? You have to work for it, to earn it, and to maintain it, and discern the shit out of everyone and stuff, right? So I'm just going to get into the main part of this, alright?
All right, 1500 AD, Amica Crusade. All right, the quest for the Holy Grail continues as the Hyksos Knights Templar, Anu Melchizedek Illuminati races, and the Omicron Draconian Nephidim Anu Melchizedek Illuminati races advance their One World Order agenda in pursuit of the Holy Grual, the Grual Point, which is Stargate 2, the central control point for Earth's Templar, and both competing groups intended to hold dominion over the lands of the Grual Point when the stellar activation cycle arrived. The Protestant and Catholic invasion of Native American tribes began. The divisions that happened here, they both began to use the same books, all right, the same records of the falsified canonized Bible. And they used that because it had been spread and, you know, pushed around so much. It was now a very powerful political control mechanism. So the Anunnaki races went into doing Protestant translations in rebellion against the Catholic translations, which were the Draconian translations. So here again, in the Protestant and Catholic division, you are seeing Anunnaki agenda and Draconian agenda. And you're seeing various fragments of each of those also happening. It's been progressively all through our known history. And both of them came over to invade the American tribes. We talked about that because there was attempts being made to bring back the CDD plate teachings and oral tradition. So they went after the tribes that were in North America and the Inuit tribes that were in Canada that were being given the information, and then they went down and they raided the tribes that were also in South America. Okay, let's see. Okay. The name America came from the name of one of the Emerald Covenant Magi Grail lines known as the Amica, who were protectors of the Gruol Point. The Gruol Point was known to exist in the lands of the North American continent, a territory once held by Atlantis. Guided through mystical secret societies set up by their respective fallen angelic kin, competing groups of Melchizedek Illuminati races launched a progressive infiltration and takeover of the North American continent, each intended to destroy the exiled Lemurian and native Seminole and Amica Native American Maji-Graeline tribes and the Inuit tribes from up here. They didn't talk about anything about Canada until we got here, which is very characteristic sometimes. We go to a place and that's when the memory of the grids is given to us. Okay, let's see. So they wanted to literally destroy the race lines there to stop them from preparing people through oral tradition to know what to do when the Great Cleansing came. And that's where a lot of the Hopi prophecies and all those things were coming through. Okay. Okay, because the tribes were being taught to run the round table, so they would be ready. They were being taught. This is where, you know how you picture like a lot of the indigenous groups, they'd do their dances around the fireplaces and stuff. Yeah, this was not random dancing. And before it got corrupted, it wasn't trance dancing or any weird stuff. They originally were running rounds, as were the people in Hawaii, the original people in Hawaii who were doing hula dances. They were doing Merkaba when they originally started. They were using the sariyas with the hands, and they were using the hips to move the Merkaba. All of these things have the tradition that goes, like these traditions go right back into what was once the sacred knowledge of the Templar. Okay, let's see. Okay, so America was founded by the Luciferian Hyksos Knights Templar, Anu Melchizedek Illuminati, who now go by the name of Freemasons, on behalf of Galactic Federation and the Pleiadian, Nibiru, and Anunnaki races of the 9560 BC Luciferian Covenant. Competing Illuminati groups and their stellar co-conspirators intended to use the North American Gruol Point and their holdings of Stargate 11 in Europe, Stargate 4 Egypt, and Stargate 10 in the Middle East to gain full control of Earth's Templar on behalf of their stellar contacts. They were going to do this during the stellar activation cycle we're in the middle of right now. It was anticipated by all that the final conflict drama in the Battle of Armageddon would take place as the competing Draconian and Anunnaki descendant Anu Melchizedek human Illuminati legions began to battle it out for control of Earth's Templar during the long-awaited stellar activation cycle. Neither side anticipated that there would be enough surviving angelic human tribes and Magi races left with knowledge to run the round tables to prevent the Illuminati, known as the Leviathan Force, which the Illuminati collectively is called the Leviathan Force. They didn't think there'd be enough of us left to stop them from succeeding in their one world order agenda. So they figured they just had to fight with each other because they'd already gotten rid of us by then. You know, the true human gene codes and the indigo gene codes. And even if they didn't get rid of all of us, they would have had us under total brainwashing where we wouldn't have any information about the rounds or any of it. So we would just actually help them to fulfill their agendas. Okay? All right, wait a minute. Okay, included in this One World Order agenda was the reinitiation of contact with the fallen angelic ET legions as the SAC drew closer. The fallen angelics intended to slowly make their presence known, then come in to stake their claim as the stellar activation cycle approached 2012 AD. The first contact was done through channeling. It started, I believe, in about sometime in the 1700s when Galactic Federation started to actually make contact, but they didn't call themselves that then. So literally, we have been set up. The New Age movement was a setup, and it was run under lip service to Christ consciousness and to a false unity consciousness. It was just meant to literally create a group of lemmings they could lead right off, you know, the cliff into Phantom Matrix. Okay. Okay. The fallen angelics intended to slowly make their presence known and stake their claim once the stellar activation cycle came. And originally it was around 2012 that they were planning to stake their claim, to let themselves be known that they were here as ETs. The Draconian, Reptilian, Centaurian descent and Melchizedek Illuminati races attempted but failed to claim world dominion over their Anunnaki adversaries via their representative, Hitler, in World War II. Both Illuminati forces have been competing for political world dominion. This is where we end up in America, at least, with the bipartisan system where you have Democrats and Republicans, you have Anunnaki and you have Drax. And they don't know that. The people who are part of these parties don't know that. They're caught up in the political machine. They don't think there's anything bigger or greater. So they focus all their energy into the manipulation of the outer level of the machine, where all their energies and their attentions are totally drained, and now they're all being channeled into TV time, where we're all learning to live in the virtual reality hologram within our heads that's just projected out into the little screen, where nothing is real to people anymore except TV and politics and paying taxes and the job. Talk about a brainwash job. They did a good job of it. Okay. Yeah, the Democrat has historically been the Anunnaki Illuminati, and Republican has historically, at least in this country, it may have been a little different the way those parties work in Europe, but Republican was Drac here. They're all Drac agenda races. And then literally, we had this even in the Civil War period in the United States, where the Southern Dracs were fighting the Northern Yankee Anunnakis, you know, so the rebel Dracs and the Yankee Anunnakis. And the people that get caught up in this on the outside have no idea. They identify with the words that were put on these things, never having any idea what it's connected to behind that. Most people don't even know that Dracs and Anunnaki exist, you know? Okay, let's see. Don't worry, I know this is depressing, but by the end of it all, we'll feel good again, because it's not that hard to solve, but it's helpful to understand what you're trying to solve. Okay. Okay. Both Illuminati forces have been competing for world dominion. They have been the predominant hidden source of war, race hatreds, and territorial, financial, and religious competition behind and within world governments until the September 12, 2000 United Resistance Alliance. So they've been fighting with each other through, you know, literally for centuries, who's going to control what. But September 12th, 2000 is when the United Resistance, United Intruder Resistance was formed, when you had Anunnaki races that didn't like the Dracs, Dracs didn't like the Anunnakis, and you had the Andromi races, the Necromaton Andromi in between. They have a bunch of hybrids. One of them is a Nephilim hybrid. This particular group of the Andromi Necromaton, which are the beetle people, hybrids are Nephilim beetle people hybrids. They're the Archangel Michael Matrix people. All right, that's who Archangel Michael is. You're sent holograms of angelic contact through the Nibiru and Diodic crystal grid system that they access. And this is the grid system that we've learned about since we've been up here.
So I may have just played a clip, and I'm not sure what clips I'm going to play, but there's an Asher clip that's related to the political parties. So I may have played that, or there's a Michael Dezarian clip that I've played a few times about talismanic words and political leaders using the same speech in different regions and stuff, and that goes back a while. Because we all sense that there's something going on. You know, political leaders lie all the time. Why are they lying and stuff? And because if, as I said, go back to GSF 27 and that link relative to the lecture going on in there, there's all the political variables going on that basically the less and less human influence of the populace over what is being done has been the consistent evolution that's been going on for these last 60 years. But the reason why I'm offering this in the Amplify the Echoes of Our Souls, the Ancient Truth series, is because that 60-year macro, it goes back into, from my perspective, what's gone on the last 25,000 years. It's just a play on that, right? And so if you don't take the context of the bigger scales and the Leviathan DNA tech and the Leviathan agenda of pillaging for thousands of years to get the codes to create the body tech, that these invaders can rule by the appreciation of mass incarnates, as in like a soul can occupy many bodies. And I was going to do an image for that. I haven't done it, I realise now, but there's the whole Incarnation War series, particularly part 6, where I talk about mass incarnates. So you see these political leaders basically go in and do stuff, and then they disappear, and then someone else comes in, or a different party and stuff comes in, but they're doing all the same sort of thing. So what I'm going to do is offer a really good translation on another level that I know is not out there, because this will blow your mind. All right? So I'm just going to get into this. So I think I might have offered an Asher clip this time. I may have offered the Michael Desarian clip at the front, right? And the reason why I'm just offering the Usher clip is she talks about the different parties being, particularly in the US, because it's very potent at the moment with what's going on, but it's influencing everyone. This is meant to be a bit of a timeless teaching on the politics sort of variable that's always been there, right? But she talks about the politics being very black and white, or red and blue, the red being reptilians and the blue being Democrats. And I'm going to just, I don't think that's totally accurate, all right? And I'm going to offer more depth of why, because what's playing out in the reality now sort of offers that, okay? And I'm just sticking to those couple of main species because, in my opinion, they're still at play. A lot of the layers going on are to confuse that, but it's actually quite simple and stuff, right? There might be subspecies or different separate species, but if I'm not totally accurate, I'm more aiming to use this as a pattern recognition, decoding sort of variable to have a foundation to splice up the little differences of the stuff that isn't included in what I say. I hope that makes sense, right? So that I'm trying to make this as simple as I can to build upon in your algorithm of your pattern recognition, because pattern recognition skills is a very high necessity sort of skill to have, right? So I'm just going to get into this, and what I'm going to do is started talking about the source level of things and use that as a metaphor of the bigger scale to drill down into this one, right? So I'm just going to show you an image. So I haven't used this one for a little while, but I'll bring it back up because from Ash's perspective, what she used is the language of the convolution, right? It's like a degeneration of the souls and stuff. And so from the law of one concept that we're only one source and stuff, and source basically split itself and then started going at itself to learn more lessons. That's a concept that's out there in the spiritual community and stuff, right? So it's like source separated itself, just like the metaphor of an egg in cells, in conception and stuff. So conception at a high level of the perception of the potential for conscious perception, that's a big macro level of things, right? That I've used in my linguistics. But so she goes by the fact that source devolved, alright, and then created all the disturbance and stuff like that to go at each other, and that's where the original sin sort of happened from her perspective, where stargates were destroyed and everything has originated from then. But what I've done with people and stuff over the last year is we worked out that there was an invasion at the moment of conscious conception from our source, right? And it's the corruption that came from another universe or multiverse that created all that, right? So I'm just going to offer these concepts as reference points to move on and get into things. So one of the main foundational components that I've offered is this concept called pure source. So just imagine like the triangle sort of metaphor of the hierarchy goes back to this all-seeing eye, which is Weezadak from my perspective. It's another universe that's energy harvesting us. That's why it's on the money, interest and all that sort of stuff and that. But what I'm getting to is just imagine the different layers, like the layers of paper, like just imagine the triangle is an overlay over the circle, right? And the circle is the pure source behind it. But we've never known this because the corruption occurred at the moment of conception. So corruption has been a default assumption in us that we've never known. That's, from my perspective, created all that conflict and stuff. And then the invaders, right, they've never had to accommodate the laws of the universe, and we're being disadvantaged because us of this universe have, right? And that's where the metaphor of immigrants versus, reality beings that have to accommodate the laws and they don't have to, sort of thing. It's fascinating, isn't it? So yeah, that's one of the big concepts. Okay, and I'm just using this as a launch pad because this is the macro, and we'll delve into the micro metaphor of the political sort of thing, alright? So then, stepping out a bit bigger, these are all the different universes, and from my perspective there was like a big coordinated effort to take out a lot of the influences, and it was like our universe was very naive, being such a pure original source with no context for all this stuff. We were vulnerable here to the migration from other universes, and I've just offered one of the variables I felt going back even levels was there was a coordinated effort to take out a lot of the influences, and they fell back to our universe, alright? So that's where it's been really tough here, because the worst of the worst have actually been here, alright? And that's where we're so epic. We've had to endure all this and gotten to this point after I've offered the range of time 1 trillion years, alright? So I'm just going to move on. So I haven't shown this for a while, but this is a metaphor of the larger time scale sort of thing, alright? So they've grinded us down and stuff, alright? And the whole last 30, 40 years and stuff, even though everything has gone on, and Asher refers to the 25,000 year Stargate cycle and that, and we'll just go with that, you know, these reference points, alright? So there's been a massive grinding us down to nothing and stuff, alright? And the vast majority are just passengers to this. They don't have any soul resistance or ability to overcome all the influences stuff, and just imagine all the pillaging, the past life trauma, the curses and all that sort of stuff. But out of all this pressure that they've put on conscious potential with the vast majority to control the planet, there was always going to be a bubbling up of people, right? That the pressure is going to bring out the pure source diamonds in us, right? And so this is just a bigger macro of what I'm going to drill into. But the agenda of, say, the invaders and the Leviathan force and the United Intruder resistance that Asher uses as a metaphor, it's all sort of playing out. But that's where I'm saying, like, us of pure source of 22D, it's never been offered in the sort of community, and that the lower dimensional levels aiming for 5D and stuff, it's totally vulnerable to all of this stuff, right? So what I'm going to drill into is the political aspects, and ideally I've got enough time to talk about the spiritual and the land sort of thing. So this is a new image. This is just sticking with the red and blue sort of parties around the world, and it's interesting, the blue party in Australia is actually the red and stuff, alright? So I'm just trying to make this really simple, alright? So just imagine each party is made up with many beings, many actual separate, say the Anunnaki or the reptilians, they've got many subspecies, you know, that's been talked about and stuff. So let's just refer to them, but there's more than this. This is just to use it as a codex to decrypt all the complexity that's going on, right? So as I said, down the bottom there, there's that life force variable, right? And so just say when control is absolute, they're harvesting us, like making a lot of life force bank through the money system and control and influences that we have no idea that are going on, and they're just doing their thing. So everything is good and everyone is winning, and I'm just using the variables in the parties as that's the perception of the public sort of thing. And you know, me going into the, say, the species sort of variable, it's so out there for most, and it's okay, but it's just, unless we actually embrace that, then we're never really going to understand what's going on and that. But what I've got here is what the perception is. A lot of beings, like maybe different species or races, you imagine that, like a lot of people come from different regions of the world, so there's different races making up humanity and stuff, and so they're made up in the parties sort of thing. What I've offered here is, you know, that's a metaphor of the pure source and no one else. Sorry, that's a metaphor of the Asher sort of, everything's originating in our universe sort of thing. But now I'm getting into a bit of the complexity of saying, actually, in each party, it's a mismatch of the different species. So potentially, like the Republican red, they have aspects of Anunnaki that, you know, they've made deals, or they've got, imagine in the ancient past, they've had marriages with different kingdoms sort of thing, so there's bloodline sort of ties, or they have like the United Intruder Resistance sort of thing in the different parties. So the different parties, from my perspective, aren't just purely those species sort of thing that Asher says. They're a mismatch, and via agreements and stuff. And so when things are good, everyone's like calm and enjoying it. They're serving themselves, and everyone's getting served by the buffet here sort of thing, right? Of feeding off humanity, a bit like Dark Crystal sort of thing, okay? But I'm just offering that because of some stuff that's happened and some interactions, right? That I've been able to work out this, alright? So I'm just going to move on. So this is my pattern recognition algorithm sort of image that I've said, and one of the main variables is the interaction I had in that synchronicity video, and you can go look at it, who I interacted with and stuff. But I've had, since then, because that interaction wasn't totally positive for me, I got smashed, and we worked out a lot what's going on, and to me it wasn't so much about being positive, it was like they needed a light level being like that to mess me up as well, right? So what I said about the lower dimensional levels, and then working with other aspects in higher dimensions and stuff, and the Trojan horse sort of thing and that, alright? There's all these variables at play, plus influences and putting shit in your body, and nanotech and biology monitoring tech and tracking tech and all this sort of stuff. But I have actually had very deep involvement in the last couple of weeks, and it comes from the US politics sort of tangent. And the variable that I got, right, was actually like relative to the Republican funding and Mitt Romney, alright? And there's been this variable going on for a while, and it hasn't been totally clear what's going on, because, yeah, and I'll just show you. So going back to that past image of assuming, like, say the Republicans are all reptilians and stuff, right? What we realized is there were many variables, and using the assumption of, say, the Asher sort of stuff of that red and blue, black and white, not grey sort of thing, it was a setup for failure. And so what I might do is show you an image of an article, alright, in parallel to this, that came up this week. And the very cool thing was it was a bit of a big variable to actually help me see what was going on, like the fracturing in the parties, alright? Because, say, what I'm saying is, like, we're reducing their benefit of life force stuff, right? So that article is there. I'll probably put a link in the base to see it, but say there's certain people against people that are going for presidency that have been very polarized against them for a long time, and it's like, okay, sure, you got a disagreement and there's something going on, but what I'm appreciating now, it's the different species going at different species within the party sort of thing. And so there's a lot of variables over the years of why this person is working with other parties. Like McCain was going against sort of Trump for a long time, right? But this variable of Mitt Romney going against sort of the Republicans and stuff, what it realized by association and stuff is it helped translate the different species working with different parties, alright? And then the fracturing of the parties is I'll get into it in this next image, right? That Zero Hedge article was very profound this week, with the confirmation of actually doing a lot of healings and GSF level clearings and stuff, and the earth pranic healing as well, right? So I'm just going to move on. Right? So I'm just going back to this first one, right? So when things are good, everyone's got their agreements, they're getting their nourishment, they're getting their benefit, there's no need to disagree and stuff. But I would offer, say, in the Republican Party, from my perspective, Mitt Romney and all he's around are actually Anunnaki, right? because I've got direct involvement to confirm all this, okay? And it goes beyond that, right? This goes to aspects of control on the earth as well, because there's been very targeted people out there that are catching their pure source sovereignty, and that's a threat because the code stealers and aspects and control and stuff like that, they're benefiting from what they're gaining from people. And when people claim their sovereignty, they don't get the life force harvest and stuff, and there's like, oh shit, our inferiority is being identified, we're under threat, sort of thing. So what I'm just saying in that article is it helped reveal this pattern, okay? So I'm just going to move on. So just take note of the life force when things are good and stuff, and look at their images at the bottom as well, right? So this is a metaphor of what's going on now, right? So from my perspective of the work we've been doing, taking away the structure that they've had and the benefits they're gaining, there's an awareness of the threat, right? So it's different between an altruistic sort of pure source, win-win, wanting the best for, and truth and authenticity. All these frackers and stuff are liars. They're working on that agenda that I said about the Swedish guy and what's going on there, the population sort of variable and that. But to me, it's like, this is a confirmation of what's going on of our success, that we're having victories on the structural level that very few can appreciate, right? So you're going to have to take a trust variable in what I'm offering here. But what I'm saying about that article, and say John McCain versus sort of Trump sort of thing, of why are they so polarized against members of their own party sort of thing? Why are they actually going and supporting other parties and that? And so there's a bit of a scrambling of the lines that don't add up, right? And so what I'm offering is that they're actually perhaps different variants of certain species in the opposite party. So say McCain and Romney and that, they're actual Anunnakis that have been in the reptilian party. And so I'm saying they're service to self beings, and so they'll frack each other over, right? So say if the resources of nourishment are not enough, so what they're going to do is look to screw over their other aspects in the community, alright? So say if there's a vastly major, let's say the Republican Party has way more reptilians, right? And there's only very few Anunnaki. Well, those Anunnaki service to self beings in their minority, alright? They're gonna like, oh shit, I'm in trouble. So they're gonna actually like back out of that agreement and unite and probably go back to the Anunnaki sort of stuff. So that's where you're seeing the different colors go against different colors, alright? So because of the absence of resources to maintain themselves, the species unification is going on. Because what I realized back ages ago, like 10 years ago, was the servers itself are always going to frack each other over. When their energy is being backed in the corner, they're going to screw over, you know, whoever's the least aligned with them sort of thing. So what I'm saying is there's a species alignment going on. And so what's going on now is the escalation of the parties, like it's literally war. Like you look at what's going on with the votes and just the crimes going on and shit. So I hope this is a bit of a translation of the shit going on, right? And you just see the warfare going on in the narrative and that, and I appreciate the different states and stuff like that. And what I realized is there's a different variable going on, and this is where it translates to the spiritual community and stuff. So what I'm going to do is evolve this. So this is just parties and that, but this is going on around the world, and this is why everything is so abstract, like the Salvador Dali aspect coming out, because unless you appreciate the multi-D and this sort of thing, of the control of a very big level, you're never going to understand this, right? And people don't give a shit anyway, but this is the battle going on. And in my opinion, it's all because we're having massive strategic wins on big scales, pulling all the shit back. And they're in trouble, they're scrambling. And they know their Adjustment Bureau fate is coming, right? That's why the warfare is not covert anymore, it's over in our face. And, you know, consciousness has been the threat, and that's why they've gone after us. Like I said in the Sovereignty Declaration, of all the variables going on. So I'm just going to move on because it's getting dark and I'm going pretty long with this, alright? So I hope this really helps. So again, before I move on as well, like, this is just a very simple view. You know, there's independence and shit like that, but I would offer they're all different species. It's more than just two species, but I would say that the species, it's like, that's a cultural thing of the invaders that is going to be a fallback for them, and they're going to unite behind the species to be a one front sort of thing, rather than the vested interest agreements and the united intruder resistance, because this is what's going to go on in the spiritual community as well, right? It's going to be shown. So I'm just going to move on to the next level. So this is another new image, alright? And again, just overlay what I've said in that, but this is a bit more complex. So the top circle, the blue one, that's the politics. The green in the middle is the actual earth. So you imagine the surface control and stuff. And the bottom red circle is all the spiritual community. And in my opinion, alright, and it's more particularly focused on the grid workers of the planet, alright? So all these separate circles are like, say, regions or countries. And the parties relative to what we think in the public, alright? So I've given more colours because different variables up there. And then, you know, there's beliefs or communities or whatever, you know, like I've got a big no trust in the ET community sort of thing at the moment, big time, for many reasons. And maybe I'll get into that, maybe I won't, but just see, this is a metaphor of offering. The life force variable is the indicator as well. Like, there's an abundance of harvest and life force for everyone, and the status quo, a lot in the community influencing corrupted and offering false teachings and stuff like that. Say the different regions of the world, and you might want to translate them to countries, but I would offer there's another variable, because again, with this interaction and client sort of scenario of mega violation and stuff, it's fascinating because this individual could go to different regions and be safe, and go to other regions and get mega targeted, and say the targeting occurred on Anunnaki land because of that connection, but when they would go to other areas that were, say, reptilian, they were free. It's not so that they were free, but they weren't targeted because it wasn't a jurisdiction under the control of that species, alright? So there's countries, states and regions and stuff. Going back to, say, Douglas Dietrich, he offered this variable that the countries aren't really representative of the military jurisdictions, and I would offer underneath that, alright, there's another map that's relative to the control of the species or the factions and stuff. Because going back to the Ayani massacre and that, from my perspective, that's a reference of when we lost any surface control. So Earth has been an occupied planet since, and then there's, you know, just kingdoms and sort of stuff, counties, and just imagine that relative to the species as a sub-layer, but as the foundational structure. I don't have the way to interpret it at the moment. It's just a metaphor of offering that maybe there's a layer below the country sort of thing. Does that make sense? And it's based on species control. And it wouldn't be in the public because we're not meant to actually know it, right? But what I'm offering is, from my perspective, like, I come from pure source, earth, soul, upgrading her to 22D and actually clearing all this shit off the land, right? So we can actually have a free expression that has no influence in that. And that's where I realize a lot of the grid workers in the community working in alignment to the negative, you know, they're representatives of this as well. Because going back to April, we really looked into the spiritual community, and we worked out, tracking back, what's going on is there's, you know, I've warned about going into groups sort of stuff, and, you know, these beings that are pop up and get support and stuff. We tracked back a lot of the agency influences in the spiritual community, because like I gave that 2012 image, the old black and white one, there was always going to be awareness of the potency of the souls coming through from the incarnation war perspective. So I've always said the spiritual community are the massive threat, okay? So the targeting and stuff going on, but it's like literally we worked out, I showed a article and there's a female in there. It's that being that was energetically in control of the influence of the spiritual community. So it goes to that high level of the intelligence sort of stuff, right? We tracked it back to them. That was in April. So we've known about all this stuff. It's not a joke, and I'd be vague and stuff about it, but like the abilities of the people around me are just ridiculous. So it's just been very easy once we have all this context to see the truth. And so this last weekend we absolutely audited all the spiritual community, because like I said, there's a lot of naivety, a lot of wiping and stuff, but there's willful ignorance. Not only that, there's vested interest corruption. So a lot of people are benefiting financially and having lifestyle based on giving false information and derailing people, you know. So the whole community was massively audited over the last weekend, okay? And so that's why I'm saying it's going to be like brutal. It's going to annihilate a lot of people, and a lot of shit's going to come out, right? But just take that, we'll move on, right? Just appreciate the different levels, because what I'm offering is the spiritual community, the compromise aspects, and the species are definitely working with government relative to the earth control, alright? So I'm just going to evolve this one like I did the other ones. So as you can see down the bottom, the graph is the life force. It's a bit like the metaphor of when the fracturing happened in the politics sort of stuff. So we've had a really beneficial sort of, like a lot of parabolic progress of really strategic wins and stuff. And what we do is we see it, and all this truth is being revealed, because again, another big thing we did, this was back in July, and shout out to this being, is it worked out that the reptilians were attacking me and people and stuff, and it was like, wow, like they've never been on the radar, like how are they not even known and stuff? And obviously all the wiping is done. Like the mantis are very, very skilled at wiping and actually inserting Stockholm syndrome, gravitate to the negative sort of DNA to make you want them and stuff, and Anunnaki and the reptilians and all that. But what we worked out is the reptilians were using extremely advanced cloaking tech, a bit like the Klingons in Star Trek, and we just basically busted all cloaking tech, and no one can use it anymore. It all got audited and wiped, and it's not valid here anymore, sort of thing. It's not applicable. So what you're going to find is people aren't able to hide behind their bullshit anymore. Their truth is going to be, it's like, what the fuck did they say? So what they were saying years ago is like covert stuff, and now it's overt in your face, and they can't hide it, right? So a bit like that life force metaphor in the politics, you can see that what I'm offering in the political parties, there's different species united, right? And there's a cross-pollination of all the species in the groups and stuff, and in the control of the planet and stuff, right, in the regions. And it's same in the community, spiritual community. I'm just doing the green as the pure source sort of stuff, but that very united intruder resistance of doing the negative, we don't know it, but I'm just saying there's this cross-pollination going on, right? But what's going on with the lack of life force is hey, I'm able to see some stuff now. The truth is coming out. They're not able to hide behind all their shit, right? And Earth is pure source 22D, and she's a bit uncontrollable, and the grid workers are going to go out and try and do their shit, but it's not going to work anymore, right? So they're unable to maintain themselves, but we get all the energy back and our talents and codes, and you know, we can employ violation as our asset and do sovereignty declarations and stuff. Plus appreciating that energy hygiene is probably the most strategically beneficial thing to focus on right now to endure all this. And the byproduct of being clear is awareness and life force and maintenance of your body and stuff, right? So I'm just going to move on to the next one. So the top one is like that third or fourth image. So you see the life force down the bottom of it. It's a lot less. So a lot of the falsehood maintenance is unsustainable. And so the species are united against each other sort of thing. And on an earth that's very potent 22D, it's like they can't do shit to it anymore. And yeah, from my perspective, then the fallout in the spiritual community, they're going to go at each other and, you know, pass the hot violation potato to another. So we'll see, it's just that switching of the karma sort of thing and that. But I would just offer, this is sort of the things that are going to play out. Everything's in our favor. Does that make sense? So ultimately, what I'm offering is that the negative aspects of the spiritual community have variables in it that are working in partnership with the political, and they're being squeezing us from both sides, alright? And ultimately that's unsustainable. Fraud and falsehood dreads investigation, truth invites it. Truth and authenticity are very efficient, and we've had massive victories on the structural sort of stuff going on, alright? And so the avalanche has started, okay, and all this is playing out. Who knows how it's going to play out, but yeah, I'm just offering that aspects of the community have definitely been working in government alignment, alright, and yeah, that's how much we've been up against, not knowing it, trusting these people, and they've been having their way, alright, and still that hasn't been enough, okay. So I'm just going to back to the first one of this, alright, because there's some stuff I want to say. So I was focusing on just parties in the country and stuff. So another variable that you can translate this, right? It's like when leaders gather in certain regions, and then there's a, you know, there's a G8 sort of thing, and now it's not G8 because, say, Putin and China and Russia aren't a part of the G8 anymore, sort of thing. So there's a fracturing going on, right? But say you see a person like Trump, he's going and agreeing with them, and like North Korea and stuff like that. And so, and then say in the US you see like dual citizen passport holders with Israel and stuff like that. And so in the country focus, there's these metaphors, but on the world stage there's this metaphor as well, right? So this is a way to pattern recognition those variables on the bigger stage. So the reason why I bring this variable up, overlaying it with everything said, ideally what I've offered is enough to do a codex of everything and see the different leaders represent different things, different species, alright, and different regions of control. And so these big rituals go in different regions because then they anchor the regions of control below the country sort of thing I would offer. But we can use the countries as a variable and stuff, but just see the fracturing is going on and the falling back to species, or maybe core aligned aspects rather than the fringe ones, and the life force, the benefits are not able to be sustained. So then there's an infighting, like a backing all these variables back into a corner because they're not self-sustaining, they're vampiric, they need nourishment from external, and that plundering has been cut off, and so in order to survive they've got to cut limbs off, so to speak, and so they'd rather frack over like an aspect of a species that aren't aligned to them. And that's why I'm saying, like, the service of self aspect kicks in, and then they're looking like, oh, I'm in threat here, I need to make a different agreement and take my resources and go elsewhere, sort of thing. And so you can look at it in the strategic, the micro of a country, but then the macro of the planet. But the bigger macro is all this bigger scale, amplify the echo stuff, right, that we're working on, which to me is all the checkmate. But I'm really hoping that all this is helping you to decode all the craziness and the abstract nature of our multi-dimensional reality to what's really going on. And I'm deliberately not offering all the answers. I'm aiming to just be very broad, the concepts, because then you can go look at who's had agreements with what, who's had meetings, who's had divisions with countries, who wants to, like, there's say this Lindsey Graham wants to bomb Iran all the time and shit, but there's other members of the party that don't and stuff. So there's all these sort of agendas playing out with different variables in it, and I would offer these are all the different species and different, you know, war harvests a lot of energy sort of thing. So that's where it's like things aren't unified. Service itself is looking to frack each other over and stuff. And so what I'll do is I'll go into the spiritual community a bit more, because that's why it's been so potent against us and me especially, right? So it's getting very dark as well, and I'll just offer a few images relative to that, because this is going to be pretty long and pretty big already. But this is the image that I've come to the conclusion of, right? This is like the 22D relentlessness of the equation of our eventual victory, alright? And that's why I've said, like, the few of us that have been 22D, the red line is the resistance. So there's very few with maximum resistance, and there's only like a little shoots at the moment of the pure source sort of 22D mechanics. But from my perspective, what's going to happen is, as the influences have too much cost to be maintained, the byproduct is awareness returning into people and sovereignty path. And the ultimate nature of people is to seek the best, right? And all of this stuff is our nature, what I say. It might sound way out there and stuff, but to me it's like the metaphor of 22D is like that little shoot, like our vastness is that parabolic end. And that's why I'm all about infinite potential, and that's why all these frackers have been trying to derail me like crazy. It's all confirmation of that and this, okay? So I'm just going to show you some of the images that I've shown, and I haven't shown for a while, but I'm just going to expand upon them a bit, alright? So this one is a bit of the metaphor of what it's been like on our individual journey. And it's like it hasn't added up. Why are we getting compromised? Why aren't we having this amazing life and stuff? But it's like tough. Like you come in raw, you get targeted. You know, there's these negative beings out there that, you know, are apparatuses that control on the bottom that I said. That, you know, you get going and you get put on a radar and you get targeted. And you might go through this brutal journey, but ultimately experience is the key to wisdom, and getting smashed, what doesn't kill you make you stronger. Ultimately you get wise from experience and then you develop. A lot of people won't. The willful ignorance is pretty epic at the moment, and they're not my responsibility. I'm a variable out there that can help overcome and accelerate the experience of this to get to the other side. But ultimately people, from my perspective, will come to that, and it's going to be easier, as I showed. Like, we've had it really tough. We're laying the foundation for the potential of everyone, okay? So I'm just going to move on. So what I learnt is there's these apex beings that are going out and hijacking everyone, and I'm being a hen in a fox house, a fracker magnet to these things, and they've come at me pretty hard to try and derail me and stuff, and hijack everyone that I clear, or target everyone I clear. But once I clear and get people's codes back, then they target them to harvest their codes and stuff. But this was a very simple view of that, right? But I've got a bit more of a advanced view on this, because it's not just one player, it's many players, okay? This might be a bit hard to see, it might be a bit complex to say, but say there's many of these very apex beings that have a lot of minions under control, harvesting from them, influencing them, stealing their codes and stuff like that. And they're all working in concert. And what they might do is they mess with someone and then send them out. Or there might be particular vulnerable people that only believe in 3D 5 cent stuff that have all this network, and then they hijack the network, or they create books and compromise the books to feed into their network of influence and stuff. And say I've been there trying to do my thing, and people get targeted, people get weaponized, people get Trojan horse, and I've been battling just to establish myself up against all this resistance. And people get, you know, these guys know what they're doing, like the code stealing, the wiping, working with the negative species, like putting people up for abductions and stuff. And honestly, all the United Intruder Resistance, these guys have all been working together in partnership on that lower level in the spiritual community, and many of them doing grid work, and basically they just fuck everyone up. And we've set the bar very low, but that's where, say, I've been relentless and never stop. And the real thing that the people laugh around me is that these guys have been trying to control me and they just can't control me. So they've just tried to destroy me and all this sort of stuff and take out people around me and all that, but it hasn't worked. We've flipped it all on them, and this isn't going to be sustainable, right? So it's, as you can see, it's quite dark. I've made it. I've gotten through for once, finally. So I think that's a good round out. So there's a lot more I could say on a lot of things, and maybe this is just a big overview and stuff, but I think this is going to be very rich for a lot of you guys. It's going to be very potent. It's going to like, oh my gosh, wow. And it's going to translate so much. And you guys have invested so much to have the components, and this will just like put the jigsaw puzzle pieces together. And I really hope, instead of believing in these politicians that never deliver, that this is a very potent reminder to really employ all that I've said in the last couple of months, like the spiritual selfishness and the structure that's in place and that, and just stay the course, stay focused on your infinite, energy hygiene and stuff like that. So yeah, this would be Amplify the Echoes part 14. I'm not sure what the name is. I was aiming to do the Ayani second part, but I feel like decoding the politics, it's going to be a huge ally, because there's a lot of weaponization in the different regions and locations, say of the different states in America. Like, I've dealt with a lot of people and stuff, and there's a lot of influence of the narrative and stuff and weaponization, and the craziness is amped up. But I hope this codex will be a ally to navigating it all for you, alright? So I really appreciate your investment in me. I hope you get a lot from this. I hope this really empowers you to the next level. And if you have gained anything from me, it's an honor and a privilege, and I'll look forward to being with you next time. But I really hope this is a potent release, and we'll see where we go, guys. Best of luck. The brat from down under, causing havoc with truth. No fucking faster. Aiming to be the most hated and piss off the most variables in the universe, multiverse, all at once, as usual. So, take care, guys. Andre out. Until next time. Bye for now.
Everything's gonna be alright tonight. Oh yeah, my love for you is gonna keep on rising. The sun's gonna keep on shining. Bright days on the horizon. My love for you will keep on rising. Everything's gonna be alright. The sun remember heading for the city lights. 975. We sharing each other, mirrors and father. Scent of the lemon drips from your eyes. We are the people that rule the world, fostering in every boy and girl. All rejoicing in the world. Take me now. We can drive, we live in adventure, love in summer. Follow the sun tonight, reminiscing of the times of life. For each every other, the feeling is stronger. Shock at 11, got lost in your eyes. Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now? Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now? Can you remember in human nights? It was to where we'd energize, lie in the sand and visualize like it's 75 again. We are the people that rule the world, fostering in every boy and girl. All rejoicing in the world. Take me now. We can drive. Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now? Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now? Everything about you, know everything about me, know everything about us. I know everything about you, know everything about me, know everything about us. Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now? Can't do why when I think you're gonna leave me, but I'm gonna try. Are you gonna leave me now? Can't you be believing now?
John Lilly once put it this way: there are no limits at all to the human mind whatsoever, except those we impose on ourselves because of our beliefs. And those limits are also beliefs to be transcended. And that's a view that suggests that the possibilities of human transformation are virtually infinite. And we have no way of knowing the outer horizon of what it means to be human.
And really, to understand all this, everything, you have to go very, very deep into a study of history, consciousness, neurophysiology, everything. You have to be the supreme eclectic type of leaning, and you really have to be wanting to know who you are and what everything's about.
And the thing that you'll find when you go to sacred sites, if you're very humble about it, is that you are on a personal journey, and the sacred site will respond to you in a way that is appropriate only to you. The information is always what you are searching for. And it's the intent you give that energy that defines whether it is used for right action or not. And it is inside these sacred spaces that you will be reminded that you are a god, that you are a bright star.
So what you're trying to do is move through the course without ricocheting off walls or creating karma. You're trying to slide through things smoothly. How do you do that? It's called flowing. There's a technique that you can do that will allow you to touch some part of your inner being that has more knowledge than your conscious state does.